Okay, so today we're going to learn how to do a face slice in Photoshop. So this is the image that we are going to end up with, and this is where we started. So you will find the credits for these images, because they're not my images, in the details below. So we're going to, I've taken this image and I've cut out the hand and I've straightened it up a little bit so that we can use it in the image. I'm not covering that in this topic because I've covered that in previous weeks. So this is the original portrait image that we started with, and I just done a quick cutout on here and replaced the background with a white background to give us this image, and this is where we start. And if you take a look at the pointing finger, I just straightened it up a little bit and then reversed it so that we have a hand that we can use to come in from both sides. So if I just close these images because I don't want to use these. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, we've got the image prepared, ready to use. So we want to Command and J or Control and J to duplicate the background layer. So we're going to click on the little eye on the background layer just to turn that layer off. We'll then select the background layer and we're going to click on the new layer icon at the bottom of the layers palette to create a new layer above the background layer. We're going to hit D on the keyboard to select default colours, and we're going to hit Command and Backspace or Control and Backspace to fill the new layer with white. So now you can see, if I just undo that with Control and Z, you can see we had a checkerboard here previously, but with the Control and Backspace now we've filled that background with white. So we are now going to select layer 1 and we're going to come up here to our rectangular marquee tool, and if you don't see it there, if there's another one, you can just right click and select the rectangular marquee tool. We're just going to click and drag out an oblong across his forehead here. Now if you take a look on the screen, it actually shows you the dimensions that way this box is going to be. So you just want to take a mental note of that, so that when we come to do the next one, you want it roughly about the same size. So we'll just drag that out and leave go. So with this box selection active there, if you just click inside, you can drag the selection around to just refine where you want it to. And we want it to be sitting just above his ears there. That's great. If we right click inside of this oblong now, and we are going to select layer via cut, and we'll just click on that, and now that's produced a new layer, and we're going to double click on this layer and rename it top cut, just so we don't get confused and we know exactly what we are dealing with. So we're going to come back down onto layer 1, your portrait layer here, and we're going to repeat that process, and we're going to come up and select the rectangular marquee tool, and we're going to click and drag and just sort of drag this out across the nose area and have it just coming just above his lip. So it doesn't have to be exact, but just roughly about the same dimensions that you have the last one. And again, we can click inside and we can drag it around and reposition it exactly where we want it. Just about there, just above his top lip. And then we are going to right click inside of there again, and we're going to say layer via cut, and now we're going to double click on that layer and we're going to say call it lower cut. Okay, so now you can see we've got our top cut, our lower cut and our portrait layer here. So you can see now, if I select my top cut layer and I use my right and left arrow keys, I can move, oh sorry, I hit Control and T on that layer, then use the right and left arrow keys, then I can just move that selection along a little bit, yeah, and I come down onto the lower cut and I hit Command or Control T to get the bounding boxes up, and then I can use the right arrow key and I'll drag that along and reposition that. We can come back and move these around at any point, but we'll just get started with that move, and I just hit either hit enter or hit the tick at the top to verify that move. So the next thing we want to do is we want to come into the pointing finger image, so we select that image up here and we're going to take a selection now of one of these. So we're going to choose our quick selection tool and we're just going to click and drag out over this selection, and you can see it hasn't done that good a job. We can just add a little bit in there, but that's good enough for what we need. So now we come up to the top of our tools palette and select the move tool, and we just left click on that hand and come up, hover over our image and bring it down and leave go, and there we are, we have our first hand inside of the image. So that has produced another layer, so we are going to double click on that layer and we're going to change this to left hand, so that if we want to reposition them, it's easy. We can tell by the name of the layer which layer we need to be on very quickly. So if I have that left hand selected and I hit Control and T, then I get the bounding box, so we can move this around and we want to rotate it. So if I hover just outside, actually if I hit the shift key and I drag it out to make it a little bit bigger so you can see that a little bit more clearly, I can click and drag inside of the layer to move it around. If I come outside of the bounding box and I hover around on the outside of one of the corners, I can just click down and rotate, yeah. And again, if I hit the shift key to keep the dimensions, then I can just click and drag this out to make it a little bit bigger and position that there. Either hit the enter key or hit the tick key and that is fine. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So the next thing I want to do is I want to come back into the pointing finger image, and if I hit Control and D to deselect and come back onto the quick selection tool, now I want to drag out and make a selection of this hand, and that's good enough. So I now want the move tool and left click and drag, bring it up, hover over the name of my portrait image and drag it down and leave go, and there we are, we have a pointing finger here. So again, we are going to double click on this layer and we're going to call this the right hand, and hit enter. And again, if I hit Command or Control and T to get the bounding boxes, we can move this around and reposition it. We come outside and we just rotate it a little bit, and if I hit the shift and drag it out to control the proportions, you can see that I've lost part of the finger here when I'm doing this now, and that's because these hands need to be at the top of the layers panel. So literally all I have to do is come over onto the right hand and drag it onto the top, and then I'll drag the left hand up there, and you can see now I have that portion of the finger back. It's not hiding behind that layer any longer. So of course I want to come back onto the right hand and click Control and T, and we just want to drag this out and make it a little bit bigger and reposition it in there. There we go, and hit the tick or just enter to define that. So you can come back onto any of these layers and it's clear layers. It's clear to see which one is which, and with the layer selected for the top cut, for example, you can just hit Control or Command T and use your arrow keys again to just reposition that if you want to move it around, just that so that you can get everything in the same place. If you wanted to come back down onto the lower cut, same thing applies. Select the lower cut layer, Command or Control T, and use your right or left arrow keys to refine them. The next thing we want to do is we want to merge all these layers. When you're happy that you've got everything in the right place, then we're just going to do the Command Control Shift Alt and E, or Command Option Shift and E. That is Control Alt Shift and E, or Command Option Shift and E, just to make sure I said that right. And then we have a merged layer at the top here. So we just want to add a little bit of texture onto here now. So we're just going to come up to the top menus here, right up at the top of the screen, and we're going to go Filter, into the Filter Gallery, and we want to come into the Textures section, and I'll just zoom out. So we've got this is a rather large image, and we just want to be able to see what we're looking at there. That's right. So I want to come into the Textures pack, and I want to select Patchwork, and we're going to have it square size as 5 and relief at 0, and then we're going to hit OK. We are then, if I zoom in, you can see that's quite strong, and it's made everything rather soft. So we're going to just click and take the opacity down to about 40%, and it just blends things together just a little bit better. I mean, you don't have to be too precise on how you do that. So now we are going to hit D to make sure that we have default colours showing up here, and we are going to come down and to the bottom of the layers palette, and we want to add an adjustment layer in here, and it's going to be a gradient map. So we select gradient map, and that brings up the gradient property box. If we click on the gradient itself, that brings up the gradient editor. So with the gradient editor, we just want to go into the basics panel, and we want foreground to background and gradient type solid at 100%, and we are going to select OK. This should be at the top of the layers palette, so we'll just drag it up to the top of the layers palette there and close the properties box. And there we are. If we zoom out, there is our completed face slice image. Thank you for that. You can now flatten your image and save it as a JPEG, or you can keep it just so that you can use it as a reference and save it as a PSD with all the layers, so that you can come back to it at any point and take a look at how you had it set out. Thank you.